Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. That sounds about right. Um, so right now, this is going to be my first video, and I'm not sure where the direction of the channel is going to go. So I'm just trying something out, and as you can know from the name, it's supposed to be a podcast, but I'm trying out a YouTube video first. And going forward, maybe depending on the feedback, I'll probably change theme, probably have more guests and talk about different topics. But to start off, I'm going to start off with something which I like, which is watches. And I'm going to talk about this watch which you can see on the screen right now. This is a Seiko Kinetic model. This watch, I bought this in 2013, and it's in pretty good condition for a watch that is 8 years old. And I bought this when I was on a trip to Japan in 2013. It was like a first trip after I finished my masters, and I went with a couple of my classmates, and it was a good trip, and I'm happy I bought this watch at the time. I didn't realize it at the time, but now it's a good reminder of the trip. Every time I wear this watch, it reminds me of the time I had in the trip. So that's one of the reasons I'm just starting this video with reviewing this watch. It's not that much of a review, and just talking about this watch, how I got it and what it does. So yeah, to recap, got this in Japan, and I've been wearing it ever since. And let me talk about the movement a little bit. The movement, as you see on the dial, it says kinetic, and it is a type of automatic movement, and it is different from the traditional automatic watches. So traditionally in the automatic watches, what you see is there's generally a wound coil inside the case which holds the potential energy, and as the coil opens up, it powers the movement of the watch. And traditionally those are either automatic winding or manual winding. So automatic winding, generally they wind on their own when you wear the watch and move it around, whereas manual winding is you need to do this action with your watch. But in the kinetic movement, it is a type of automatic movement, but the energy that is stored inside the watch is not stored in a coil. Instead, there is a capacitor inside. The capacitor acts like a battery, and every time you wear the watch and you walk around and you move it around, the capacitor gets charged, and it holds a lot of charge, and it can discharge that to power the movement. And traditionally an automatic watch can have a power reserve from like 1 day to up to 3 or 4 days, not more than that. Some rare models have up to 8 days, but in a kinetic movement, you can have a power reserve that goes up to 6 months. I'll show you how we can read that later on, but to start off with, that's the basic difference between a kinetic movement, automatic movement, and a traditional automatic movement. So let's talk about the dial a little bit. So as you can see inside, the dial is like a step dial, so it's not just like flat printed numbers on the dial. You can see it if I change the angle a little bit. You can see that there is like a 2 levels in the dial, so this kind of adds a bit of depth and character to the watch. The size is 42. The size of the dial is 42 lug to lug. So let me just show it on my hand. I'm a left-hander, so I wear it on the right hand. So as you can see, my hand is around 20 centimeters circumference. It looks kind of normal on my hand, but you don't have to worry about the size. If you like the watch, just wear it where it looks large or small. I think that's just a matter of opinion, but the fact is, if you like the watch, just wear it. So that's how it fits on your hand. And let's see, the case and the strap is everything stainless steel. The markers are just lines, and if you can see the date, there's a date window It's normal size. I think it's reasonable for the size of the watch. There's no cyclops like how you traditionally see it on like Rolex watches. And the date is just a normal transition date. There's no jump date, which means that as you approach 12 o'clock midnight, you will see, like, for example, it's 10 now. So when the day changes to 11, as you approach 12 o'clock, you will see like half of 10 moving out of the view and half of 11 entering the view. Whereas the jump date, traditionally, the date just switches at midnight without like transition time. So that's a minor feature. I mean, it just comes down to the movement, how it's implemented, and some people like it, some people don't like it. And another thing of note, which I didn't know at the time, is if you see at the bottom of the dial over here, where my thumb is pointing, it's not very clear, but it says Japan, right? What that actually says is it says movement Japan, as opposed to made in Japan or Japanese made, right? What this means is that the movement inside the watch, the technology that actually powers the watch, and the timekeeping technology, where how accurate the seconds and date and stuff is, that movement is made in Japan. But the watch assembly, the strap, the case, the dial, and everything, those are probably not made in Japan. I'm assuming that's made in China, but that's what this means. So if you see even Swiss watches, right, if it says Swiss made, then it means that the watch is entirely made in Switzerland. But if you see like movement Switzerland, right, then that means that the movement inside the watch, that is just keeps the time, that is what is made in Switzerland. So here, movement Japan, it means that the watch movement was made in Japan and not the watch itself, which is again a distinction for people who care. At the time when I bought it, I didn't know it. I bought the watch because I thought, okay, Seiko is a Japanese brand, I'm in Japan, so I'll buy it. I didn't know that this distinction at this time, but ever since I came to know about it, so whenever I go to any country to buy a watch, I buy something that is made in that particular country. And maybe in future videos I'll show you those watches. Let's see, let me talk about the back, right? So the back is like a clear back, or sometimes it's called an exhibition back, and has just some details. So as you can see over here, I think it mentions more clearly over here, movement Japan, if you can see it, right? And that's the branding. And water resistance 10 bar, translates to like 100 meters, which is what it says in the dial as well. And stainless steel, everything, and that's the case number. And this is a case back number as well, the 5M62. This will come into play later. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But the main thing I think you can see is, as you can see over here, as I move this in the back, this hammer which moves around, that's the one which kind of converts this kinetic energy into electrical energy. And you can see the electrical coils inside, and the capacitors inside. It's not visible, but when you move your watch, this hammer moving around converts the kinetic energy into the potential energy, which stores as an electric charge in the capacitor, and then the capacitor discharges as a battery to power the watch, right? And let's see, the strap is a standard stainless steel strap with brushed steel and some polished links in the middle, and it fits nicely. I had to remove one link for my wrist. Other than that, it's a pretty good fit. And let me talk about the power reserve, right? So there is a way to read the power reserve, and that power reserve function is triggered by this button over here on the side. So if you want to know how much charge is left, what you need to do is you need to wait for the watch seconds hand to reach the 12 marker, and then press that button. And then based on how many seconds the seconds marker moves, you can tell how much power is left, and that depends on the model. And to look it up, you have to look up uh, this number, right? This number over here, you need to look up this number to understand, like for example 5 seconds translates to how much power. So let me show you once this reaches the 12 marker, right? So all you need to do is look up that number and then wait for the seconds marker to reach the 12 marker, right? 12 hand, and press this button. So let's wait for it. And yeah, all right, so it's gone up to 20 seconds, right? So that translates to about a month of battery reserve. So that means that if I store this watch without any movement, then it would run for 1 month. And now you notice the seconds hand, it will start up on its own again, right? So that just means that when you press the power reserve, it goes to whatever power reserve is there, and then once once that many seconds pass, the seconds hand starts up on its own. And for this model, 20 seconds means one month, and if it was like 5 seconds, it's 1 to 7 days. If it's 10 seconds, it means like 7 days to a month. 20 seconds is 1 month, and if it's 30 seconds, it's 4 to 6 months. On this watch, I don't know, maybe because it's old, I haven't seen it go up to 30 seconds before. So the maximum reserve I get out of this watch is 1 month, which is pretty good compared to the traditional automatic watches, where the reserve is on average 2 to 3 days, but the more common one is like 1 day, and very rare ones are 8 days. But for this, 1 month is pretty good. Of course, you can't compare to a quartz movement. So that's the main thing about the watch. Another thing about the watch is I guess the final thing is the loom. That generally is a good indicator to tell you how good or how old the watch is. So let me show you the loom. This watch has been under this light for quite some time, so I'm assuming that the loom has been charged up a bit. So let's try it. All right, that seems pretty good, right? This traditionally is a marker to tell you the age of the watch, and the loom generally fades over time, over many years, exposure to sunlight, things like that. And the older the watch gets, the loom deteriorates. And depending on collectors, like some collectors like loom which is faded, it'll turn a bit yellowish. But if you go to a authorized service center, they can refurbish the loom. But again, it depends on your preference, right? Some collectors like to keep the watch that shows its age. Like even if there are a bit of scratches, they wouldn't polish it off. They say that it builds character, but there are other people who like to keep the watch as new as possible, so they would update the movement. If something breaks, they'll replace the part instead of just fixing it. If there are scratches, they'll either polish it out or change the glass. And if the loom fades, they just refurbish the loom so that it's bright again. So yeah, so that's about it. I hope you liked this review. I hope everything was clear. Let me know what you think in the comment section on how you like this watch, and what else you would like to see, or what other watches you'd like to see, and or what are the topics you'd like to see. And yeah, I think that sounds about right. Thank you, everybody.